Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels, Ashlyn, Sullivan, Al Morganti here with you at the end of the week. We did a podcast at the beginning of the week, getting ready for what we knew was going to be a tough week for the Flyers, but it just goes to show how a couple games can change everything. The Flyers with back-to-back wins for the first time this season, a massive win in Boston against the Bruins, and then they followed up with a home game win against the St. Louis Blues to get ready for a really big game this weekend against the Bruins again on Saturday. So exciting things going on with the Flyers, and I think the biggest thing as we get to our first topic out, back to basics, it's the first time in 10 games that we've seen them play like we saw the Flyers play last season, where the first couple games of the season we thought, how can this team look so different all of a sudden?
Yeah, they got back to their defensive structure. And you know what's really bizarre? You would think that we'd be flying high over the win against Boston, but I was more impressed that they followed up with the Blues because the Bruins are a mess. And, the Flyers actually it's good they're coming in for the next game, I think, although they might be all fired up. But to go back to back, to shut down teams, to not allow a whole bunch of odd man rushes against them, I mean, it's a really good sign. And it's especially a good sign, Ashlyn, because it's something that was addressed. It's like when you talk to Tortorella afterwards, say, we need to do this, we need to do this. And then you wait to see, well, are you going to do that? Yeah. and it got done. It was like, so the message is getting through. And what's even more important about that is that message has to also come from team leaders. Couturier, the captain, Hathaway's played really well, Paling, Sanheim, and go through the list of guys that have been here. They've really buttoned down their defensive structure, how they play the game, being hard to play against once again.
Yeah, and you can tell it's a team message because every player we talk to are saying the same thing, that when they play defensively sound with structure like we're seeing, they give themselves a chance. I feel like every intermission interview I've done, they tell me the same thing. So it's clear that's coming from Torts. And while people will say, okay, well, yeah, we're not seeing any goals, how can this be a good thing? I mean, I thought it was Nick Seeler last night post-game was saying, we know this is the way we have to play. Basically saying for us to have success, there is one model, it is this model, and we're going to do it to have success.
Yeah, you can do that for a while. I mean, but it's also, Ashlyn, why you're not considered like one of those elite teams, because you don't have that other end of the game, which we'll talk about, coming up. But, the fact that you can go back and when you really have to dig in, to be able to shut another team down and when you say hard to play against, the block shots, the block passing lanes, all of that, the wall play. Now you can have what you could call passengers, like coaches like to say we had too many passes. You can have one or two passengers occasionally and to kind of like be the guy that's going to be the offensive spark maybe. But when you're losing, you can't have that, because there's no margin for error. Mm-hmm. There really isn't. When you don't score a lot of goals, because their power play dried up, especially at home, which is amazing to me, you really have very little margin for error. So you have to get back to it. And when you win, it's much easier to do all that. It's like, okay, it's worth the effort.
It's worth the effort. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And it also puts a ton of pressure on your goaltender, Sam Ersson, to be nearly perfect, which he nearly has been so far this week in these two games we've seen him. We predict we'll see him again on Saturday. The Flyers don't have a back-to-back until the end of November, so that's interesting. But one of the biggest takeaways from the game against St. Louis was really the first big-time lesson we saw from Michkov. He had a terrible start to the game, a ton of turnovers, only took 4 shifts in the first period, sat a good bit. Torts went really in-depth post-game of why he did that. I would encourage people to go listen to it, because a lot of times you don't get the reasoning from Torts when asked, why did he bench a player? Normally it's his way or the highway. I thought it was notable that he gave a really long explanation of why this happened, because he understands people are going to freak out when they just see a headline that Michkov's been sat, and they have to understand the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, they're going to freak out especially because it's Torts. It's like, there was probably some betting line on when Michkov will get benched, right? And I think what people have to realize is he's 19, as Torts mentioned. And he's been benched in the league over in Russia, the K. He's been benched there because he's so young and he makes mistakes defensively. And in that one shift, what did we say? It was a hat trick of mistakes. It was his first NHL hat trick was 3 mistakes. Trying to be cute. This is not as you go along, you can try those cute moves might come because other teams are really worried. But right now, that turns ugly pretty quick. And it was not 1, it was 2, it was 3. And I find it really interesting when there's a language barrier on explaining to a player what's wrong. I mean, he knows the turnover or whatever, but it's almost when there's that, and it won't be long because his English is getting much better, but it's not like you can go right to the, explain everything quickly. I wouldn't think, but I think he said it has between periods. They did some stuff. That's another barrier, I think, into what's going on. He knows the hockey language on the ice or whatever, but I think when you're doing the intricacies, like we've seen him just floating around, it's like he's intuitively a really good offensive player, but the other players have to kind of know where you are. And sometimes, we're watching, well, where is he? And he'll be in a place where the irony is he'll be in a place where if he had the puck, he would be looking to throw the puck, the pass over to. So everybody has to start reading over everybody else. And the fact that Tortorella took so much time to go over it, there's been no explosion over the number of Michigans he's attempted, which I find curious because they were ill-timed, I thought. But I really think that they're stressing here that they do not want to coach the offensive genius out of him. Right. But you really can't. He's 19 years old. You don't get a separate set of rules. Yeah. Can't have an organization where the captain will get benched, or a veteran will get benched, or Farabee gets piped, and somebody else doesn't. So I think that's a larger issue looming here.
No, I thought it was a great thing. And you saw in those shifts as well, which I don't think matches the team's identity, or frankly, I don't think teammates would like it very much. It looked almost like he was scared to take hits at times. And I'm seeing fans, especially on social media, which I know we shouldn't pay attention to, but you got to know the voice of the fan. I don't think fans are understanding where they say it's almost like he has to slow down offensively, where he's way up here, the team is here. But I think you have to realize him being up here alone does no good. That's not going to get to the success of the team. And people are saying, well, why can't his teammates just get better and get up there with him? Like, that's not going to happen right away. So he's going to be up here alone on an island for what good?
Yeah, it's you got to have your stick blade on the ice when he's up there. I don't know that he's afraid. He's a pretty physical guy. He pushes back. I think he tries to make a cute play along the boards. And you saw Andre do it in Boston. And I forget who the player was that he baffled on the line. He pulled the puck back, and Michkov tried to do that against a good NHL player. It's just not going to work. And in addition to, you might get stapled, you will lose the puck. And that's what happens. Now, as you go along and you get some space or whatever, you might make that play. And you know who we saw this? We saw this with Konechny for 2 years maybe on what he would do. And finally, he wouldn't make the dangerous play. It's like NFL quarterbacks. They eventually learn, you can't play hero ball all the time.
And you check it down.
This is like, okay, I can make this move. Well, in the NHL, 8 times out of 10, you can't make that move. You're going to lose the puck. And I think that's where they're trying to, and they also have to teach them just your defensive responsibility. I think that's why Couturier is on his line at this point, to try to cover up a little bit, but you have to be there, and he'll pick it up. Everybody does. And it's not easy for a kid that's been so good. Let the reins go. I mean, just let him go. Yeah. But, and the other really good part about this is, even though the power play didn't score, they almost can't just pipe him for a hole because period. They get a power play because he can be such an engine on that power play.
Yeah. So he didn't sit for long, but it was definitely a lesson learned. I thought it was an encouraging moment really for the whole team, that it's what Torts preaches. I don't care how old you are, where you came from, everyone's treated the same. And we definitely saw that on Thursday. And a little bit of that, too, with the blow of Ivan Fedotov, everyone being treated the same. We have a goalie shuffle going on here. Of course, Sam Ersson is your starting goaltender. He's playing great. But Torts was incredibly honest of where he sees the backup goaltending situation. He spoke Thursday morning skate telling us that Kolosov is the backup. If Ersson were to come out, Kolosov is in. When asked why not Fedotov, he says, frankly, he has not played well enough. So now you're wondering, at this point, Fedotov has to go down. He's got to get some work. It's weird to think you can keep 3 goaltenders on the roster for this long.
Doesn't work. It's like the goaltenders are so weird. It's almost like dating. 1's not enough, 2's too many, 3's impossible, right? So you can't do it. So it's you're going to have to. He's got to play Fedotov. He really has to play, and he's going to have to go down. The mitigating factor is the money. I mean, that's what people are going to point at. But if you're a coach, if you're a team, he's like, I don't care. Whoever's the better goaltender has to play, and he's got to learn to play here. So, I mean, that's what you're looking at here. It's an interesting dynamic right now because of the money they gave him. And I think they feel somewhat responsible just throwing him in. And they have to protect also, frankly, to be really honest, at home in Philadelphia. I mean, Scott and I are analyzing the game. You're there, you're asking the obvious question is, why are those goals going past them? And it's like, well, we don't have a technical explanation except, it shouldn't happen. It's
not playing good.
It's hard to believe a guy that big is over his head, but he's over his head right now. And I'm not saying he can't, learn the angles and it's all different here, but I mean, he really does have to play, and we'll see what Kolosov, what he brings. But it's the bigger issue to me is the bigger plus to me is Erson's really responded, and they keep saying over and over again that they really like playing, with him in goal. They play hard for him. I'm not saying they're not playing hard for the other guys, but there's certain goaltenders that are more like a defenseman type of a thing. It's like they battle. I think you'll see that with Kolosov too, because he's smaller and just looks like he's battling all the time. But you can tell with Erson, and they're also something. It's like he was brought up with them. They saw him as a backup. They saw him working it through. You look at a guy like Lawton, or a high draft pick, took a while to get there and finally, earned his spurs, so to speak. And that's what I think you see him with Erson. And he never blames anybody, never points out if a defenseman's out of position or whatever. Just stop the puck. And I think he really is. He loves the workload, especially now with some days off in between. And I think he really relishes the fact that I'm the guy right now. And he's really responded well with it.
Yeah, he's playing like it for sure, which leads us to the next steps with this team. We know that the structure, we've seen it 2 games in a row. You need to see more consistency with it, but it looks like the defensive structure's back. Sam Ersson playing like a true starting goaltender. That's encouraging. Next steps, you need more offense. You need more goals, and you need your key guys to finish. For example, Travis Konechny still doesn't have a 5v5 goal this season. Owen Tippett looks a little lost out there. He's getting chances, but not finishing. You need more of those tier guys to step up if the Flyers want to have success this year.
Yeah, your veterans, Forster, but you also this is where it gets tricky. Michkov gets benched for whatever, but you got to have some of that because they have to finish, and there's a guy that can do it. So there's a little dance going on what's going to happen here. But boy, would it help if that. We talked about the power play, how good it was early. That can really ignite not just the power play, but everybody's offense a little bit. And Tippett, you watch and you think it's just a matter of one game breakout here that it's going to happen because he's a really odd player in terms of the way he generates shots. I guess in the NBA they call it creating your own shot. He is a guy that can create his own shot with his speed, where he is on the wing coming down. But if you're going to create your own shot, it's going to be a good shot. It's got to be more, 4% shooting on net, whatever. But once that's there, I think that he really is a key element to me to be a guy that can break a close game by playing good defense. And Forster, we saw that shot with him, so we know what he's got there. That's potential. And you mentioned Konechny. I can't think Konechny can be kept off a score sheet very much longer the way he's played, the way, what we've seen from him.
Yeah, maybe Saturday's the day where it all clicks. It's definitely going to be a packed game. Tickets have been hard to come by. A lot of people excited.
You can't get tickets.
No, it is a big game Saturday afternoon at the Wells Fargo Center. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for tuning into South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We'll see you early next week.